You want to winterize your boat. Don't forget to drain your tanks, fill your tanks up, take your cushions home. No, don't take your cushions home, cover up your carpets, empty the fridges, put something in the toilet, put oil in the toilet. Don't forget the heater, order the dehumidifier, blah, 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 blah. It's the 1st of December 2021 and I'm absolutely soaked. Persistent rain outside while the rest of the UK has been battered by snow and high winds. I've come to the boat just to check up on her to make sure she's okay, but also to continue with some of the winterization that I've started already a few weeks ago. The boat's looking pretty good. I've just arrived, there's no leaks, and the cushions are all stacked up from where I left them before, and it looks like she is still securely tied to the moorings. Let's have a look at some of the other bits and pieces that we've done. Looking in the engine bay is nice and dry. The engines don't have to be winterized quite as much as some engines because the cooling process is not using normal water that's being drawn up. However, the water that sits within the cooling jackets is fresh water that's drawn in through the outdrives. As a result of that, to keep the engine bay nice and warm, right at the back of the engine bay I have 2 tube heaters, one each side, and they're driven from a thermostat which is plugged in at the back, and as long as they've got mains electricity, those thermostats are going to work. However, I have been in the past in a situation where the thermostats have stopped working or the electricity supply has dropped, and so I like to cover these up, and in a couple of weeks time I'll bring some duvets down, old duvets and blankets, and cover the engines up for the winter whilst it's sitting in the water. Now, I bought the dehumidifier down a few weeks ago. This is one that we inherited with the boat, but it's a very good quality dehumidifier. We've pumped the water out of the toilet system and we've put a little bit of lubricating agent in there. Some people use vegetable oil. We use a glycol soap based product which keeps the pump working nicely and doesn't allow it to dry up, but also stops it from freezing. You don't want a toilet pipe freezing up in the winter, because if that pops and breaks, you'll have a very smelly loo when you come back. Although it's a little dark, the one good thing about Sea Line is everything is accessible. Underneath here, this little compartment, we have the 2 through holes and the Seacocks for the toilet system. Both of those are isolated and switched off, so water is not being drawn in and water also can't get out again. These are really important that you do cycle these from time to time. What you don't want to do is leave them the whole winter and then find that when you move them in the spring you break them and you end up with water coming back into the boat. Whilst I'm on board today, I'll just keep the fan heater running, keep a little bit of warm air in the boat. That'll warm all the metal surfaces around the doors and just keep the condensation at bay. One thing I've stopped doing over recent years is running the battery charger over the winter. I tend to visit the boat quite regularly, and when I'm on board I do charge the batteries, but in the past I've had a bad experience where either the charger or the batteries have died through constant use or charging over the winter months. The next thing, which is absolutely essential, is to make sure that water system is completely drained. I've drained everything I can from the tanks so far, but just going to make sure those last little bits are just run out and pumped out of the system. Water in water pipes, especially flexible water pipes over the winter, is probably the biggest reason for water failure or water systems failures. Some people I know leave the taps open over the winter. I don't do that, but I also don't do them up really tight. I do them just loose to keep the washers in good condition as well. Here's a little tip: if you leave carpets and things down in your boat, or if you can't take your carpets up, underneath your hatches, just pop a towel on the floor. Condensation gathers on these quite prolifically over the winter months, and it drips down on the floor, and sometimes you think you've got a leak and you haven't, but you find a little stain on the floor or on your bedding when you return to the boat. We've got stays on the doors, so the door's not banging around, to keep the doors open through the whole of the boat over the winter months, and so the air gets circulated around throughout. Lastly, ensure your fridges are switched off, nice and clean and dry. The ice box has got no cold ice or water in it. Prop the door open with a cloth or something so it doesn't close. In here, I've even got a small dehumidifier as well. So doors left open and slightly ajar, just allows the water to get away from there if it starts forming with condensation, and keeps the mould at bay. It's so cold here in Lowestoft I can barely get my words out. That's what we've done with winterization so far. We've got a little bit more work to do between Christmas and New Year, after we've used it and enjoyed it just one last time for the season, and then we're going to take care of the engines and make sure they're nice and warm and they're not going to be suffering from any problems. We're hoping to get the boat out of the water in the early part of 2022, but thank you so much for joining us over this season, and we hope to see you in the new year with some new adventures with Friday Night.